Economic migrants are people who cross international boundaries in search of a better quality of life. But if things don't work out, they can return home without any problems. Today, most of the UK's economic migrants come from the European Union, an international trading zone that began life more than 50 years ago. This footage shows the moment in 1957 when the European Union really began. France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands and Luxembourg signed the Treaty of Rome, creating a common market that allowed goods, services and people to move freely across the national borders that had previously separated these countries. In the 50 years since, the European Union's continued to grow. The UK, Ireland and Denmark joined in 1973, and by 1995 there were 15 member states. The 1st of May 2004 saw the Union's biggest expansion to date. On that day, 10 new countries signed up, 8 of them former communist states of Eastern and Central Europe. Millions of people from less well-off nations were suddenly free to travel and work anywhere in the European Union. And so began the biggest movement of people in Europe since the Second World War. For farmers like Will Hawking, Europe's expansion has meant having access to a massive new pool of labour, something that was vital to the future of his business.
If you are involved in agriculture or food production or factory work, as I have been all my working life, the biggest constraint has always been in what is essentially an affluent society. It's always been finding people who are prepared to do the work. It's not the work rate. It's not actually necessarily the wages. It's just doing what is fairly dull work. So it came as a very welcome relief when we were able to find people that were not only prepared but extremely keen to take on this kind of work.
Will runs a dairy farm near Chippenham in Wiltshire, and when the price of milk began to drop in the 1990s, he decided to diversify into making organic ice cream. But prior to European expansion, he found it very difficult to recruit workers locally.
So our experience in this part of the country, attempting to run quite labour-intensive businesses through a long period of economic boom, is that there's less and less willingness really of people to take on that kind of work. Typically the best we could get really would be people who wanted to work part-time, but we found it was a huge constraint really on our ability to develop our business, and we were simply not able to take work on because we couldn't find people to do the work.
Today, in summer when demand's at its peak, Will employs anything up to 25 staff. Among them is Andre, one of 6 full-time employees from Latvia, one of the countries that joined the European Union in 2004.
I have in Latvia work, but wages not so very well. No money. Yeah?
You needed money.
Need money, yeah. It's simple.
Situated on the Baltic Sea in northeastern Europe, and with a gross national income per capita of less than £4,000, Latvia is officially the poorest member of the European Union. It's no surprise that when the borders opened up in 2004, 50,000 Latvians left to find work in other European countries. And like Andre, around 15,000 of them came to look for work in the UK. But until recently, like many migrants, Andre had to leave his family at home and support them by sending money back to Latvia.
Before I'm working here maybe 3 or 4 years, not just holiday. 1 week, 3 months, it's so difficult, you know. Children go up and not see father, and yeah, but now much better.
After 4 years of living on his own, Andre's wife and children have joined him in Chippenham. And despite the challenges of living in a new country, things are looking up.
My wife not speak English, it's hard for him, and children start school Also a little harder, but going, how to say, up. I like here work, and if I don't like this job, I not stay so long. It's my first job, and I hope be last.
With so many people leaving Latvia, in some areas there's a labour shortage, and employers have had to put up wages. But Andrej's boss is in no doubt how important the 6 Latvians he employs are for his business.
My little business would not be where it is without those guys. It would be absolutely impossible for us to be running the business we have now and to be able to contemplate expansion.
But not all migrants have such a positive experience. And with large numbers of people moving between EU countries, in some parts of the UK, managing the impacts is proving a major challenge. Take a look around Llanelli, and you'll notice lots of the signs, library books, newspapers and magazines are in 3 different languages. It's just one way that the businesses and authorities are trying to integrate the 2,000 Polish migrants who've moved here since 2004. But despite their efforts, not all migrants get well treated.
They get recruited over there, they get promised a lot of work, as much work as they can handle, and plenty of money and cheap accommodation, and they are made a lot of promises. Then the coach brings them over, they are disembarked outside the agency's office, they have to sign a contract. They sign here, here and there, and in effect they would sign away all their employment rights.
As a centre for meat processing and food production, the area around Llanelli has become a major recruiter of semi-skilled Polish workers. Some estimates say there are as many as 8,000 living in the Gwendraith Valley. But with language and other difficulties, new migrants are highly vulnerable.
Then they give access for the employer to make deductions from their wages. And they're doing that in majority without knowing it. On the part of employer doesn't sign up to anything. Employer doesn't have to give them any work at all. It's called a 0 hours contract, which means if there is no work, then they've got no work. They're not earning.
Helping with employment rights is just one of the services provided by Llanelli's Polish Centre. Coming from a different culture means migrants often need support in dealing with things like tax forms, applying for schools or setting up bank accounts. But some problems are more difficult to deal with than others, especially when it comes to claiming benefits. Although migrant workers pay tax and national insurance, they only qualify for unemployment and housing benefits after they've been working in the UK for more than a year.
If Polish people encounter problems, they lose their job and they find themselves on the street, well, nobody can help them. Nobody at all. Local authorities won't help them, the government won't help them. They're not entitled to anything unless they've actually worked for a year continuously.
Podanie na provisional driving license wygląda tak. W języku angielskim. Ja ci mogę pomóc wypełnić to.
Despite the efforts to integrate migrants into Llanelli's wider community, short-term contracts, employment and other difficulties mean only a third of Polish migrants in the area stay for more than a year. But one who has is Lucas. These days, Lucas is a skilled concrete floor layer. But when he arrived in the UK, it was a different story.
I started for food factory. The factory was inside was really cold. I feel like if I not find any better job, I go back. But I don't know. I was lucky, and I found the job where I work now, and I'm happy. In Poland, you have to be really tricky for survive, because the money is still bad. The job is exactly the same, but the money is bad.
Until the end of 2008, the UK's booming construction industry was also suffering a skills shortage. and many building companies, including the one that Lucas works for, relied on migrant labour from the new European countries.
I think in total they make up about 20% of our staff. So during the busy times, especially last summer, we were really struggling to get any sort of labour, and migrant staff, especially the skilled staff, were, invaluable, really important. With some of the jobs you need to be time-served, time-served carpenters. So we do look for skilled labour. With sort of the labouring sort of roles, we train people up. Some of our concreters, we've got 3 concreters who are Polish, who knew nothing about concrete before, and they're our better staff now.
Despite a downturn in construction, Lucas has decided to stay in Wales. But Poland's booming economy and work on the London Olympic and Paralympic Games means that many of the migrant construction workers are already moving away from the area. And in the new expanded European Union, moving round in search of work is a trend that looks set to continue to grow.